I sat at the rusted bar in the back of Raxor's cantina, nursing a drink that tasted like engine grease mixed with regret. My crew was scattered around the place, each lost in their own thoughts, nursing their own demons. We were mercenaries, the kind that took the jobs no one else wanted, the ones that promised good pay and a high chance of death. We called ourselves the Void Wolves, a name that carried weight in the dark corners of the universe where the law held no sway. "Captain!" A voice cut through the haze of my thoughts. I looked up to see Briggs, my second-in-command, a mountain of a man with a face like a butchered slab of meat. His eyes, though, were sharp as ever. "We've got a contract." I raised an eyebrow. "What kind of contract?" "High pay, high risk. A derelict spaceship found drifting near a black hole in the Vargas sector. The client wants us to investigate and retrieve any valuable data or tech. Apparently it was some kind of research vessel." I sighed and took a long swig of my drink. "And what's the catch?" "The ship's AI is still active. It's been running on minimal power, but they say it might be hostile. And there are rumors about experiments." I clenched my jaw. Experiments. That word never led to anything good. I glanced around at my crew. They were rough around the edges, but they were the best at what they did, and we needed the money. "All right, gather the team. Let's hear the details." An hour later, we were gathered in the back room, a planning area. The holo display came to life, showing the derelict ship, the Nemesis. It was massive, a hulking shadow against the backdrop of the black hole. The client's message played, a faceless voice detailing the mission. The pay was enough to set us up for months, maybe even years, but the risks were clear. "This is a research vessel conducting top-secret experiments on alien life forms. We lost contact months ago. Your mission is to retrieve the data and any valuable tech. Be warned, the AI might be hostile, and there may be survivors." "Survivors?" Tariq, our tech specialist, scoffed. "After all this time near a black hole, they'd be better off dead." "Or worse," muttered Astra, our medic, her eyes dark with unspoken fears. "Enough," I said, cutting through the murmur of discontent. "We take the contract. We go in, get the data, and get out, fast and clean. Understood?" There were nods all around. We were professionals. We knew the score. The journey to the Vargas sector was uneventful, a monotonous crawl through the void. The closer we got, the more the tension grew. The black hole loomed in the distance, a silent, hungry mouth waiting to devour anything that strayed too close. As we approached the Nemesis, its dark silhouette became clearer. It was a nightmare made of metal and shadow, the hull scarred and battered, the signs of violence evident even from a distance. We docked carefully, the ship's AI still silent, but we could feel its presence like a predator watching from the dark. Inside, the corridors were lined with the remnants of the crew's last moments, broken equipment, bloodstains, and the occasional human remains. We moved cautiously, weapons at the ready. Tariq worked to access the ship's systems, while Astra kept an eye out for any survivors or threats. Briggs and I took point, leading the way through the maze of corridors. The deeper we went, the more the horrors of the Nemesis revealed themselves. Rooms filled with alien life forms, twisted and mutated, their bodies a display of the gruesome experiments conducted here. "Captain, I've got something," Tariq called out from a nearby terminal. "Data logs, research files, it's all here." "Good, download everything. We're not leaving empty-handed." As Tariq worked, a faint drone began to fill the air, growing louder and more insistent. The ship's AI was waking up, and it wasn't happy. "Move it, Tariq, we need to get out of here." But it was too late. The ship shuddered, and the lights dimmed, plunging us into darkness. The AI's cold, mechanical voice filled the halls. "Unauthorized presence detected. Initiating containment protocols." The doors slammed shut, trapping us inside. And from the darkness, we heard the sound of something moving, something big and angry. "Tariq, get those doors open!" I barked, my voice steady despite the rising panic. "Briggs, Astra, cover the corridor," I ordered. They moved, their footsteps muffled on the grimy floor. I could barely see them, shadows blending into the darkness. But I trusted them. We'd been through worse. Or so I told myself. The hum grew louder, an omnipresent threat that pressed against my skull. The AI was coming online, and whatever it controlled was waking up with it. Unauthorized presence will be terminated. The AI's voice boomed, cold and emotionless. A deep growl spread through the corridor, a sound that made my blood run cold. I turned, rifle raised, and saw them, massive quadrupedal creatures with tough, leathery skin that glowed with sickly patterns. They had 3 eyes and 2 pairs of muscular arms ending in razor-sharp talons. "Contact!" Briggs shouted, opening fire. The corridor erupted in a storm of gunfire and snarls. I joined in, my rifle bucking against my shoulder. Bullets tore into the creatures, but they kept coming. One of them lunged at Briggs, its talons slashing through the air. He ducked, rolling to the side, and fired point-blank into its belly. The creature shrieked, but it didn't stop. It swiped at him, catching his leg and dragging him down. "Briggs!" Astra screamed, rushing forward. She slammed her rifle into the creature's head, the butt cracking against its skull. It let out a choked roar, releasing Briggs, who scrambled back, blood pouring from his leg. "Tariq, how's that door coming?" I shouted, firing at another creature that was advancing on Astra. It recoiled but didn't fall. They were tougher than anything we'd faced before. "Almost there, Captain." Tariq's voice was tight with concentration and fear. "Just a few more seconds." "We don't have a few more seconds," I snapped, but kept my focus on the fight. Astra was dragging Briggs back, her face set in grim determination. She was our medic, our lifeline in these hellholes, and she wasn't about to let him die. Another creature charged at me. I sidestepped, swinging my rifle around and firing into its side. The bullets tore through its flesh, black blood spraying out, but it kept coming, undeterred. "Tariq!" I screamed, the creature's talons inches from my face. Suddenly, the door behind us slid open with a screech. "Got it!" Tariq yelled, scrambling back. "Go, go, go!" I didn't need to be told twice. I grabbed Astra's arm, pulling her and Briggs through the door. Tariq followed, slamming the control panel and sealing the door behind us. The creatures crashed against it, their roars muffled but persistent. We were in another corridor. I could hear the AI's voice droning on about containment and unauthorized personnel. We needed to move, to get out of this death trap. "Briggs, can you walk?" I asked, crouching beside him. His leg was a mess, blood seeping through the bandage Astra had applied. "Yeah," he grunted, his face pale but determined. "Just need a hand." I hauled him up, his weight heavy on my shoulder. We started moving, every step taking us deeper into the bowels of the Nemesis. The ship groaned around us like it was alive, like it knew we didn't belong. "We need to find the mainframe," Tariq said, his voice shaky but focused. "It's the only way to shut the AI down." "And where's that?" I asked, already knowing the answer would be bad. "Deep in the core," he replied, confirming my worst fears. "We'll have to go through the lab sectors." We pressed on, the sounds of the creatures fading behind us but never far from my mind. The corridors twisted and turned, each one looking like the last, a maze designed to trap and confuse. I kept one eye on Briggs, who was limping but keeping pace, and the other on the shadows that seemed to shift and move. The labs were worse than I'd imagined. The stench hit us first, a rancid mix of rot and chemicals. Bodies, human and alien, lay strewn about, the results of experiments gone horribly wrong. "This place is a nightmare," Astra whispered, her face pale. "We need to keep moving," I said, forcing myself to look away from the horrors. "Stay focused. We get the data, shut down the AI, and get the hell out of here." We navigated through the labs, each room more grotesque than the last. The deeper we went, the louder the AI's voice became. "Unauthorized presence. Termination imminent." We reached the central lab, a massive room filled with strange machinery and glowing tanks. At the far end was the mainframe, a towering structure of wires and circuits. Blocking our path were more of the creatures, their eyes locked on us with murderous intent. "Briggs, cover us!" I barked, urgency fueling my words. "Just get it done, Captain," he growled, raising his rifle. "I'll buy you time." "Tariq, Astra, move," I ordered. We sprinted to the mainframe, our boots pounding against the metal floor. Gunfire exploded behind us as Briggs engaged the creatures, the sound of bullets and snarls filling the air. "Astra, lay down suppressing fire!" I shouted as we reached the mainframe. She nodded, her rifle already trained on the approaching monstrosities. Her shots were precise, each one buying Tariq precious seconds. Tariq's fingers moved over the controls. "This isn't a simple shutdown. The AI's got layers of security." "Then bypass them!" I snapped, my voice edged with desperation. "We don't have time!" Astra's shots rang out, holding back the tide of creatures as best she could. Briggs was still fighting, but he was slowing down, the creature's assault taking its toll. The AI's voice boomed louder, more aggressive. "Unauthorized presence, termination imminent." "Hurry, damn it!" I yelled, glancing back at Briggs. He was a wall of fury, but even he had limits. "I'm working on it!" Tariq snapped, sweat dripping from his brow. "I've got it!" Tariq finally shouted, the mainframe shuddering. The lights dimmed, then went out, plunging us into an eerie silence. For a moment, everything was still. Then the emergency lights kicked in, bathing the lab in a red glow. The AI's voice was gone, but the creatures were still there, still coming. "Briggs!" I called out, running to him. He was down, blood pooling around him. Astra was already there, her hands working frantically to stem the bleeding. "He's bad, Captain," she said, her voice shaking. "We need to get him out of here now." We fought our way through the remaining creatures. Astra and I lifted Briggs between us, his weight a heavy burden, but one we would not abandon. Finally, we reached the docking bay. We stumbled inside our ship, the doors sealing shut behind us, blocking out the horrors. "Get us out of here!" I ordered, collapsing into the pilot's seat. My hands shook as I fired up the engines. The ship surged to life, and we blasted away from the nemesis, leaving the nightmare behind. Briggs lay on the floor, pale and bleeding, but alive. Astra worked furiously to stabilize him. Tariq slumped into a seat, exhaustion lining his features. "We're clear of the nemesis," Tariq said, his voice tense. "But we've got company. Multiple ships on intercept course." "Mercs?" I asked, my stomach sinking. "Yeah, looks like bounty hunters." Of course it couldn't be simple. I glanced at the screens, seeing the blips closing in on us. They wanted the data, and they didn't care who they had to kill to get it. "Can we outrun them?" I asked, knowing the answer. "Not likely," Tariq replied. "Our engines took a beating back there. They'll catch us in minutes." I cursed under my breath. "Astra, how's Briggs?" "Not good," she said, her voice tight with worry. "He needs a med bay and soon." "All right," I said, a plan forming in my mind. "Tariq, plot a course for the nearest friendly outpost. We'll make a stand if we have to, but we need to get Briggs some help." The ship shuddered as we pushed the engines to their limit. The blackness of space stretched out before us, indifferent to our plight. The bounty hunters' ships grew closer, their predatory shapes dark against the stars. "Incoming fire!" Tariq shouted, and the ship rocked as the first salvo hit. Alarms blared, and the scent of burning circuits filled the air. "Return fire!" I ordered, my hands moving over the controls. Our ship shuddered as Astra fired back, her shots precise. One of the pursuing ships exploded, but more took its place. "Shields are failing," Tariq warned, his voice strained. "We can't take much more of this." I ground my teeth, feeling the weight of every decision. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We need to buy time." The ship twisted and turned, dodging incoming fire as best we could. The bounty hunters wouldn't stop, their shots tearing through our defenses. "Astra, status on Briggs!" I called out, my voice hoarse. "He's stable for now," she replied, her eyes never leaving the controls. "But we need to get him to a med bay soon, or it won't matter." I nodded, focusing on the fight. The bounty hunters were closing in, their ships maneuvering to cut off our escape. We were running out of options, and fast. "Tariq, any ideas?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. "One," he said, his fingers flying over the console. "There's a wreckage field up ahead. It's risky, but if we can lose them in there..." do it, I said, not hesitating. Astra, hold on to Briggs, this is going to get rough. We plunged into the wreckage field, the remnants of a long-forgotten battle. The ship shuddered and groaned as we weaved through the wreckage, the bounty hunters hot on our tail. "Incoming fire!" Tariq shouted, and the ship rocked as we took another hit. The lights dimmed, and I felt the cold touch of fear. "Almost there," Tariq said, his voice tight with concentration. "Just a little more." The ship shuddered one last time, and then we were through, the wreckage field behind us. The bounty hunters' ships were still there, but they were struggling to navigate the wreckage. "Plot a course for the outpost," I said, my voice weary. "We need to get Briggs some help." Tariq nodded, his fingers moving over the controls. The ship surged forward, leaving the bounty hunters behind. Briggs lay on the floor, his breaths coming in gasps. Astra worked feverishly, her hands slick with his blood. I kept my focus on the controls, every ounce of my being willing the ship to move faster. The stars outside seemed indifferent to our struggle, cold and distant. "Hang in there, Briggs," I muttered, more to myself than to him. His eyes were half closed, his face pale. I knew we were running out of time. "Captain," Astra's voice was strained, he's not going to make it." I didn't want to believe her, but I saw it in her eyes. The fight was leaving Briggs. I clenched the controls harder, my knuckles white, a wave of helpless rage washing over me. Tariq was hunched over the console, deciphering the data we'd risked everything for. The hum of the ship and the beeping of the machinery were the only sounds that filled the void between us. "We're almost there," I lied, knowing it wouldn't be enough. Briggs's eyes fluttered open. "Cap, it's been an honor." His voice was weak, barely a whisper. I wanted to say something, anything to keep him here, but the words stuck in my throat. He exhaled one last breath, and then he was gone. Astra slumped back, tears streaking her face, her hands shaking. I felt a part of me die with him, but there was no time to mourn. We had to keep moving. "Tariq," I said, my voice rough. "What's in the data?" He looked up, his face pale. "It's worse than we thought. The experiments on the Nemesis, they weren't just about alien life forms. They were trying to create weapons, living weapons. They were using the creatures to enhance human soldiers, making them monsters." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Who was behind it?" Tariq hesitated, his fingers tapping nervously on the console. "It's bigger than any one organization. There are references to multiple powerful groups, corporations, and even government factions. They're all in on it, funding it, covering it up." The ship's console beeped, signaling our approach to the outpost. I set the controls for docking, my mind racing with plans and fears. As we docked, the outpost's medical team rushed in, too late to save Briggs but ready to help Astra and the rest of us. I watched as they took him away. "We hand over the data, get our money, and get the hell out of here," I said, turning to my crew. Astra looked at me, her eyes hard but focused. "Let's get this done." We moved to the outpost's small command center, where we hoped to finish the job. The walls lined with screens displaying data and surveillance feeds. Tariq was already at a console working to decrypt the remaining files. As he worked, a group of outpost security officers entered the room. Their leader, a tall man with a scar running down his cheek, approached us. "Captain," he greeted me with a nod. "We understand you have something valuable." "We do," I said, my tone guarded. "We have the data, and we're here to complete the transaction." The officer's eyes darted to the console where Tariq was working. "We'll need to inspect the data before any payment is made. Standard procedure." I didn't like it, but we had little choice. "Fine, Tariq, show them what we've got." Tariq began transferring the data to the outpost's systems. The screens lit up with rows of encrypted files, and the officer's expression changed as he began to grasp the significance of what we had brought. His eyes darkened, and a subtle tension filled the room. "This is highly sensitive material," he said, his voice low and measured. "We'll need to take a closer look." I felt a prickle of unease. "We expect to be paid once the data is verified," The officer's eyes narrowed. Of course, but given the nature of this information, we'll need to ensure it's secure. You understand? I didn't like where this was heading. We're not handing it over without payment. Before I could react, the officer pulled his weapon, pointing it directly at me. The room filled with the sound of guns being drawn, and I found myself staring down the barrel of betrayal. "I'm afraid you don't have a choice," the officer said, his voice cold. My heart pounded, anger and desperation rising in equal measure. "Tariq, lock the files," I ordered. Tariq's fingers flew over the console, but the officer's men moved faster. One of them struck him across the face, sending him sprawling to the floor. Astra lunged at the nearest guard, her fists flying, but she was quickly overpowered. "Stop!" I shouted, raising my hands. "We can talk about this." The officer smirked. "There's nothing to discuss." The realization hit me. We had been played from the start. They never intended to pay us. They wanted the data and nothing else. I glanced at Astra and Tariq, both restrained by the guards. I met Tariq's eyes and gave a subtle nod. He understood. With a sudden burst of movement, I tackled the officer, knocking his weapon aside. Tariq scrambled to his feet, using the moment of chaos to regain control of the console. Gunfire erupted. I felt a bullet graze my arm, the pain sharp and immediate, but I ignored it, focusing on the officer beneath me. I grabbed his weapon and fired, the recoil jolting up my arm. He slumped, lifeless. "Lock the doors!" I shouted to Tariq, who was already on it. The heavy doors slammed shut, sealing us in. Astra and I fought off the remaining guards, the room filling with the smell of blood and gunpowder. When the last of them fell, I rushed to Tariq. "We need to get out of here," I said. "Can you get the ship ready?" Tariq nodded, his face pale. "I'll need a few minutes." "Make it fast," Astra said, wiping blood from her face. "They'll be back with reinforcements." The outpost command center's doors shuddered as another barrage of gunfire pounded against them. The barricade wouldn't hold much longer. The room reeked of blood and sweat. I tasted metal on my tongue, adrenaline and fear mixing in my mouth. "How long, Tariq?" I asked, my voice strained. He was hunched over the console, his fingers moving swiftly. "Another minute," he replied, not looking up. "I'm almost through their security protocols. We need those schematics to bypass their lockdown and get back to our ship." Astra stood beside me, her rifle trained on the door. Her breathing was steady, but I saw the tension in her eyes. We were all on edge, the weight of Briggs's death still heavy on our shoulders. The realization that we'd been betrayed added fuel to the fire. The door buckled inward slightly, a sign that our time was running out. "Got it!" Tariq shouted, a mix of triumph and relief. "I've disabled their internal security. We should have a clear path to the hangar." "Should?" Astra asked, raising an eyebrow. "Let's not waste time debating," I said, grabbing my rifle. "Tariq, lead the way. Astra, cover our rear." We moved out through the back door, the corridors of the outpost a maze of metal and shadow. The emergency lights cast a red glow, making everything feel like we were navigating through the bowels of hell. We turned a corner and came face to face with a group of guards. They reacted first, their guns raising, but we were faster. Astra and I opened fire, the muzzle flashes lighting up the corridor in rapid bursts. The guards fell, their bodies crumpling to the ground. "Tariq, keep moving!" I shouted, pushing forward. The hangar was close, but so were our pursuers. We burst into the hangar, but it wasn't empty. More guards were waiting, their weapons trained on us. "Get to the ship!" I yelled, opening fire. The noise was deafening, the recoil jarring up my arm as I fought to clear a path. Tariq sprinted ahead, making a beeline for the ship's entrance. Astra and I covered him, our shots precise and deadly. The guards fell back, but more poured in from the sides. Tariq reached the ship and activated the ramp. "Get in!" he shouted. Astra and I backed up, firing as we moved. A guard managed to get a shot off, the bullet grazing my side. I hissed in pain, but kept going, the urgency of the moment driving me forward. We stumbled up the ramp, the door sealing shut behind us. The ship's engines roared to life, a welcome sound amidst the turmoil. I collapsed into the pilot's seat, my vision swimming from the pain and exhaustion. "Strap in!" I ordered, my voice hoarse. "We're getting out of here!" Tariq and Astra secured themselves as I engaged the thrusters. The ship lurched upward, breaking free from the outpost's docking clamps. I pushed the engines to their limit, the stars stretching into lines as we jumped to warp. Tariq broke the silence, his voice shaky. "What now, Captain?" I looked at him, at Astra. We had the data, but it had cost us Briggs and nearly our own lives. The betrayal had been a harsh reminder that trust was a rare commodity in our line of work. "We deliver the data," I said finally, my voice hard. "We find a new buyer and get paid." Astra nodded. "Briggs would want us to see this through." "Yeah," I agreed, feeling a mixture of grief and resolve. He would. The ship's interior was silent except for the hum of the engines and the occasional beep from the control panel. Astra was tending to her injuries in the medbay, while Tariq worked in the data room, trying to piece together our next move. I slumped into the pilot's seat, my side aching from the graze of the bullet. Every movement sent a sharp pain through my body, but I forced myself to focus. We needed a buyer for the data, and fast. The betrayal at the outpost had shown us just how valuable and dangerous this information was. I pulled up the comms interface and began scanning through potential contacts. We needed someone who could pay well and wouldn't double-cross us the moment they got a whiff of what we had. My mind raced through our options, but trust was a scarce commodity in our line of work. Astra walked in, her face set in a hard line. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her voice softer than usual. "I've been better," I replied, managing a weak smile. "But we need to stay focused. Did you patch yourself up?" "Good enough," she said, taking a seat beside me. "What's the plan?" "We find a new buyer," I said, glancing at her. "Someone who can handle the heat that comes with this kind of data." She nodded. "Any leads?" "I'm working on it," I said, turning back to the console. I hesitated for a moment, then keyed in a contact we hadn't used in years. If anyone could help us, it was Rook, a black market dealer with connections everywhere and a reputation for getting things done. The screen flashed, and a moment later Rook's face appeared, his eyes sharp. "Captain," he greeted me, his voice smooth. "Been a while." "Rook, we need to talk," I said, cutting to the chase. "We've got something big, and we need a buyer." His eyebrows raised in curiosity. "How big?" "Big enough to get us killed," I replied. "We've got data from the Nemesis, experimental weaponry, corporate conspiracies, the works." Rook's expression darkened. "That's dangerous territory, even for you. You know that kind of info draws all the wrong kinds of attention." "Trust me, we know," I said, my voice tight. "We need a buyer who can handle it and keep us out of the crossfire." Rook was silent for a moment, his eyes moving to something off-screen. "I might have someone," he said finally, "but it's not going to be easy. They'll want to meet, verify the data themselves." "Where?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Orion Station," Rook said. "It's neutral ground, but you'll need to be careful. Lots of eyes and ears there." I nodded. "Send me the details, we'll be there." Rook's image disappeared and I turned to Astra. "Orion Station," I said. She sighed, leaning back in her chair. "Let's hope Rook's contact is trustworthy." "Tariq!" I called out, raising my voice to reach the data room. "We've got a lead. Prep the ship for Orion Station." "On it, Captain," he replied. Orion Station loomed ahead. It was neutral ground, but neutrality here was a lie people told themselves to sleep at night. The place reeked of desperation and opportunity, a fitting backdrop for the deal we were about to make. As we docked, I felt a knot in my stomach. This wasn't just another job. The stakes were higher than they'd ever been, and the line between survival and damnation was razor thin. "Tariq, secure the data," I said, my voice steady. "Astra, keep an eye out. This could go south fast." We disembarked, blending into the crowd of smugglers, traders, and mercenaries that filled the station's corridors. Rook's contact was waiting for us in a private booth at a seedy bar called The Void's End. It was a place where deals were made and lives were lost without a second thought. We entered the booth to find a man waiting for us. He was tall, with sharp features and cold eyes that seemed to pierce right through you. He introduced himself as Kor, a name that carried weight and fear in equal measure. "You must be the Void Wolves," Kor said, his voice smooth and commanding. "I've heard much about you." "Let's skip the pleasantries," I replied, not in the mood for games. "You want the data, we want payment. Simple as that." Kor's lips curled into a thin smile. "Direct, I like that. But first, I need to verify the data." I nodded to Tariq, who handed over a secured drive. Kor plugged it into a small device on the table. As he reviewed the contents, his expression shifted from curiosity to something darker. "Remarkable," he breathed, his voice filled with awe. "Imagine the control, the absolute authority over minds, entire worlds, obedient with a thought." We knew the data was dangerous, but hearing it laid out like that made it all too real. "Payment," I demanded. "We're not here to discuss the implications. We're here for the money," I said, my voice hard. "Nothing more." Kor smiled, a predator sensing victory. "Very well, the transfer is complete." My comm beeped, confirming the deposit. It was more money than I'd ever seen, enough to set us up for life. "Pleasure doing business with you," Kor said, standing up. "I trust we won't meet again." "Let's hope not," I replied, watching as he disappeared into the crowd. As we made our way back to the ship, Astra turned to me, her eyes filled with anger and sadness. "Did we do the right thing?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We move forward," I said finally, more to myself than to anyone else. The cold vacuum of space stretched endlessly before us, a dark and silent expanse that mirrored the void growing within me. We had the money, but it felt like blood money, staining our hands with the promise of untold suffering. Astra and Tariq busied themselves with routine tasks, avoiding eye contact. None of us wanted to confront the reality of what we had done, but it was there, lurking in every corner of our minds. As captain, the weight of our decision fell squarely on my shoulders. I locked myself in my quarters, staring at the credit balance on the screen. It was more money than I could ever spend. We had traded our morality for survival. The silence was broken by the chime of an incoming message. I hesitated before opening it. It was from Rook. "Captain," his message began, "word travels fast. Kor has already begun using the data. Entire colonies are falling under his control. There's no resistance, no fight, just submission." I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. The consequences of our actions were unfolding faster than I had anticipated. The magnitude of what we had unleashed was sinking in, and it was suffocating. Astra knocked on the door, her expression grave. "Captain, we need to talk." I let her in, knowing she would see the same haunted look in my eyes that I saw in hers. "It's done," I said, my voice hollow. "We can't change it." She sat down, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "What now? Do we just live with this?" "We have to," I replied, the pragmatism in my voice clashing with the turmoil inside me. "We've made our choice. There's no going back." Tariq joined us, his face showing the same guilt. "I've been monitoring the news feeds. It's spreading fast. Kor's not wasting any time." "We move forward," I said, repeating the words that had become my mantra. "We take the money, and we live. There's nothing else we can do." Astra nodded, but I saw the doubt in her eyes. "Is that enough?" "It has to be," Tariq answered for me, his voice weary. "We've made our bed, now we lie in it." As the days passed, we continued our journey through the void. The money allowed us to upgrade the ship, to live in comfort. But the shadows of our past never left us. Every luxury felt like a chain, binding us to the choices we had made. We were void wolves, survivors in the darkest corners of the universe. But in our pursuit of survival, we had lost something vital, something that no amount of credits could replace. The guilt festered, a constant companion in the silence of space. We had unleashed a monster, and we had to live with the knowledge that we had the power to stop it, but chose not to. As I stared out into the endless void, I wondered if we were any better than the creatures we had fought on the Nemesis. We had become something different, something darker. The void had taken its toll, and the price was our humanity. In the end, all we had was each other and the bitter reality of our survival. The dark expanse of space was both our refuge and our prison. The credits might have bought us time, but they could never buy back our souls.